absolutely terrible news. I mean, I've said it time and again, Stephen. Like Mel Brooks, Clint Eastwood, thankfully still with us at the moment. But that generation, truly great generation of filmmakers, of actors, are getting to that worrying age now where they're ready to start passing away. And once you've lost people of that standing, man,
yeah,
I fear for film in the future. We've not got people like that now.
Yeah, I watched Morgan Freeman's tribute to Gene Hackman on the Oscars last night, and it was so touching. And the both of them worked together in two films, one of them being Unforgiven. John, it's funny, Gene Hackman has always been a big part of my life. My dad was a massive fan of the actor via The French Connection.
Better.
And then right into the sort of 1980s films as well, Mississippi Burning. And you've got to remember, Gene Hackman, he didn't really become a prominent, household name till he was in his 40s, which is incredible when you think about it. Similar to Morgan Freeman in a way when you think about it.
Yeah,
but
he was older, yeah.
This guy's been acting since the early 1950s. So he's had a very illustrious career, particularly the 70s, 80s and 90s was his sort of golden era, but he'll be sadly missed. And I was deeply shocked when this news came through. I think I saw his name trending on X first and foremost, and I kind of knew he was 95 because I do see these articles coming up every now and again about him being a recluse, for the best part of 20 years now. I think his last film was in 2004.
Dean, I remember the first time I'd seen him in a long, long time. It was a couple of years ago. He was out getting shopping or whatever. And I was really shocked at how he looked because I don't know about you, Stephen, but when I think of actors or singers or whatnot, and unless I'm seeing a recent image of them, my mind just goes back to what I picture them being like 20, 30, 40 years ago. And in my mind, they still look like that. Paul McCartney, it's not until I see a photograph or something, I'm like, fucking hell, he's really old now. I just think of Paul when he was in the 60s and the 70s. And you're always kind of surprised, you're like, holy shit. When I seen Gene Hackman, I was like, wow, unrecognisable. I'm like, is that really Gene? But like he says, he was a kind of reclusive figure. I think he moved to New Mexico to get away from the sort of the bubble, the toxicity of Hollywood, which I know nothing of, but I've heard of. And who can blame him, Stephen? Once you've reached a level of fame, at a certain age, you don't have to put up with that shite anymore, the sycophants, the brown-nosing. You just get away and live your life in peace. Sean Connery did it. He retired quite young, didn't he? 60 odds? Get away from it, Joe Pesci.
Gene Hackman was 95 when he passed away, John. Yeah. So his last film was 20 years ago. So he retired in his 70s. And for a lot of people like ourselves, we regard that as old age, So for him to have 20 years of a retirement is, I suppose, a blessing in a way. You've got to look at that and celebrate his life rather than look at the sort of doom and gloom of it. John, that's what we talked about before we came on. We didn't really want to talk about, obviously, the circumstances of his passing because we're not E-entertainment. We're not Goremeisters. We're here to celebrate actors. We're here to celebrate film. That's what we do on this channel. And yeah, I'll be sadly missed, John. My first experience of the man's acting was obviously Superman. It was just that I was that age. I was born in 1976 and the film came out in 78. And to me, as Lex Luthor, there's no one came close, not on TV or any of the films since. I've seen Kevin Spacey and Jesse
Eisenberg,
I blanked on his name. Try to follow in his footsteps, and they just can't do it. There's something about Gene Hackman's charisma and his performance in that film, and there's a reason he was top billing with Marlon Brando. That's the calibre of this man's acting. He was top billing on Superman with Marlon Brando. Christopher Reeve had to take third spot.
Superman.
It's crazy when you think about it, but it just goes to show the man's calibre. And as I said, Mississippi Burning with Willem Dafoe is probably one of the standout ones I saw later when I was in my teens, which I thought was a fantastic film. But you look at those films, even in the 1990s when he was in his 60s, it's one great film after another he was in.
Yeah,
John, the first film I saw him in was actually Young Frankenstein. I forgot he was in Young Frankenstein.
What? Was he in Young Frankenstein? I'm just looking through just now.
He played the old blind man.
Christ almighty. Young Frankenstein's one of my all-time favourite films.
Yeah.
Stephen, for me, he was. Yeah, he played the blind man in Young Frankenstein. You're right, Stephen. I mean, for me, that's always going to be Peter Boyle and Gene Wilder for that. And obviously Marty Feldman, they're these standout figures in that film. They're the sort of eye-catchers. But for me, growing up around my grandfather, one of his all-time favourite films, and it rubbed off on me, was The Poseidon Adventure. And obviously he was in there, alongside the likes of Ernest Borgnine and whatnot. Absolutely legendary film about the capsizing ship and trials and tribulations of survivors trying to get to the top and survive. Fucking unbelievable in it, and that was a stat cast. But you go through and it's just, like you say, Stephen, throughout his career, multiple decades of hit after hit after hit. The French Connection. Obviously, you move on, you've got Bridge Too Far, classic World War II film. Again, my grandfather, growing up, watched these films with him all the time. Probably on Hallmark back in the day, but they were on the telly all the time. As a kid, I was, what would you call it? I don't want to use the correct word here. I was exposed to these actors in these films, like In the Heat of the Night, Rod Steiger and Sidney Poitier. Films that someone in 11, 10, 8, 9 years of age probably wouldn't watch of their own volition, but when you're around older people at that time, you get to see it and you get to experience these great performances. So even though I'm a little bit younger than yourself, not much, but I'm a little bit younger, I didn't get the pleasure of seeing him in his absolute pomp. They are the due, to be fair, Stephen. I mean, you could argue, I mean, he had great films in the 90s, but certainly the 80s and the 70s was that era. If you look through his sort of filmography, and you were a little bit young even then, but I still got to experience what the guy was bringing to the table, and an absolutely brilliant, brilliant actor. You followed again, he's been involved in a Western movies, White Earp, Unforgiven, Crimson Tide, another submarine film. I'm trying to remember who was in that, but I always get that mixed up with the Hunt for Red October, I think it's called. I don't know why. It's not the same film. But
Denzel Washington, he was in Crimson Tide.
Was that the one about the Russian nuclear? No, it's not. No, it's a totally that. It's probably Hunt for Red October. Probably the other one. But he's just a brilliant actor, and he had a distinguished career. Obviously, he did retire, and he got to enjoy his retirement. A dog lover as well, so I always think of the animals in moments like this, and what's going to happen with them when they've been given a great life with people who truly love them. And obviously the owners pass away, and in this case it's obviously his wife's passed away as well, so you always think of the dogs and how they're getting on. That's the way my mind works. Strange, I know. But yeah, just it's sad to see the guy passed away. We've lost another legendary figure. I did see Morgan Freeman, by the way. It's hard to believe Morgan's in his late 80s now as well. He's been around for so long. It's not really hard, because you think back to 95, was it? When The Shawshank Redemption was out, and it was pretty fucking old back then. The guy had white in his hair back then, and that wasn't yesterday. That was 30 years ago. There's all those 95 born people turning 30 now. Get it up, ease. Welcome to the club, bitches. But yeah, it's a shame to see the guy passed away, and also the manner in which he's passed away. A little bit odd, I'm sure. We'll get to that at some point, but like you said, Stephen, we're not E-Entertainment or that other one. What's the other one that's a sort of the Ghoul kind of publication? It was on the Liam Payne death and all of that, minutes after it happened. Forget what their name is.
I stay clear of these channels, John, to be honest with you, because it's not in their nature, because they're on doing one thing and one thing only, and that's to generate clicks, and they've no morals, and they've no respect. And as I said, I've followed it enough because just for the sort of closure side of things, because I was a fan of the actor, but I'm not really want to sit down and watch back to back hour-long specials on his passing and his wife's passing. I think it should be respected. It should be private. I'm sure there'll be an official announcement out on both their passings and an official confirmation of the reason for their deaths as well. But John, a fantastic actor. He's not been prominent for the last 20 years, but his films are always on repeat. You turn on any channel, you see Gene Hackman turn up on TV. He's got such a catalogue of films, and even small minor roles like we mentioned, Young Frankenstein, Enemy of the State, where he was only in it as, you know, I don't know what his screen time was, maybe 10 minutes or something like that.
So
and then, like Robert De Niro, he would branch into other genres as well. The Royal Tenenbaums being one of them, it stands out for me in 2001. He'd always jump into different genres and try himself out in comedies, and he did have a humour about him. He certainly showed that playing Lex Luthor in the Superman films as well. He always had a kind of comedic timing about him as well. So an incredible actor, he's going to be sadly missed.
Absolutely.